following program is in described video for the visually impaired. It is also suggested that you listen to it under the influence of heavy drugs. Thank you.
Well, alright, welcome back, beards and beardettes. Before we get started on this long awaited video of Drippy Corn Tech, yes, it's finally here. I'd like to give a shout out to some of my good friends over at Sporeworks. Sporeworks is the OG when it comes to buying spores online. You're not going to find anywhere better, I tell you that much. Each one of those syringes they have are chock full of spores. Way more than I've ever seen in any of the other vendors I've bought spore syringes from. And they're always clean. I've been using Sporeworks for at least 15 years. And there's nobody better in the business. Also, keep an eye out for their Halloween special. They always have a killer grab bag deal for Halloween. So if you're in need of some spores, hit them up at sporeworks.com. That's one word, sporeworks.com. Back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Today we are going to, you guessed it, make drippy corn. I've been slacking on this one, guys, and I'm sorry. I've been promising you this video for months now, but here it is, and I'm gonna walk you through it. All right, so before we get started, let's go over some of the equipment and supplies you'll need in order to get this done. As you can see, we've got two 2-pound bags of yellow popcorn. Each bag will make 4 jars. So we've got 2 bags, we've got 8 jars. As you can see, they're already outfitted for grains with the injection port and the filter sticker. Okay, a couple other things we're going to need to get the job done is a couple of colanders, right? Maybe you have one that's big enough where you don't need 2, but I'm doing a double batch, so it's going to require 2 colanders. Okay. Also, some utensils that I like to use. This is basically just to kind of stir stuff up, and then once it comes time for drying them, I like to use this spoon here, this scoop with the holes, because as I stir them in the colander, you know, it helps move it around, get the steam off of them. Any water that's left on them drains through. And something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but I think is very important, is making sure you condition your PC seal. Right, this is for the pressure cooker. This is the seal that goes on the underside of the lid. And every time I use it, unless I'm using it multiple times in a day, I won't. But every session, I should say, that I use it, I scrub it down with, just like you would do dishes, right? With a scrub sponge and dish soap and dry it off. And then I'll take a paper towel and a little bit of oil. It doesn't matter what kind of oil. It doesn't have to be olive oil. It could be vegetable oil. It could be sunflower, or whatever. It doesn't matter. And we'll apply some to the paper towel and condition it. And you also, on the inside, if you can see, the inside of the seal is a split seal. You want to make sure to get it in there as well. And it just conditions it. And if you take care of this seal, it will last for a very long time. Many people blow out seals and such like that within their first year or so. This is the same seal my PC came with. Look how pliable it is, right? This is over 4 years old, and it's still going strong. I haven't had to replace it. It is in excellent shape, as you can see. All right. Now, the only thing that's missing from the materials here that I haven't pulled out yet is my glucose source, which is, I use a raw turbinado sugar. You can use raw turbinado sugar, you can use honey, you can use really anything. Blackstrap molasses, it doesn't matter. Corn syrup, that's what the original Drippy corn recipe entailed, because he was also using corn syrup in his agar and his LC. Well, I use raw unprocessed sugar for my agar and my LC, so that's what I'm going to be using today to make this. But keep in mind, you can use whatever you like. It doesn't have to be what I use. It doesn't have to be what the original recipe called for. It's just whatever. As a matter of fact, I've heard some people using light malt extract. It's really up to you. Let's get this started by conditioning this seal. I just fold it up like that. Put me a little oil. Okay. And I just run it around the seal like that. Get it nice and in condition. And if you can see, I don't know if the camera will show it, but there's these little notches all the way through. It's real important that after you get the outside of the seal, that you definitely get those notches too. Right? Because that's going to be a fail point if those dry out and they're not conditioned like the rest of the seal. So we just gotta get in there a little bit, be sure and condition those. And then, like I said earlier, the inside of the seal is split, so we want to get that inside and condition that inside part too. Alright, so that is done. We can move on to loading up the PC. So now we have our bags, and I just shake them down so that I don't end up nicking my blades on any of the corn. Alright, so we got it all down. And then I just cut them across the top. Ooh, caught it. Alright, so now we're going to take these and come over to the PC, and we're just going to pour them. Nothing special there, just pour it in. Get the other one. Now remember, these double in size, so how many ever bags you put, you're going to end up with twice that amount of grain. Alright, so I moved the PC over to the sink, and I just fill it up with water. Right? Now, you are going to need a substantial amount of water in here. I've seen people who do corn who only fill it up to the level of the grain, like kind of where it's at right now, and they're done. But for what we're doing, we're going to want a little bit more here. Okay? So general rule of thumb is on a finger, the second part of your digit, right? That knuckle. The water needs to be at least that deep above the grain level. And we're not quite there yet, but we'll get there. You can see here that the water level is above the corn. And we're good. So now that I moved it back, I'm going to go ahead and get the fire started on it. Okay, maybe not. There we go. And I put it on high. As high as it gets. And then we're going to add our glucose. Like I said, I use a raw turbinado sugar, and we're supposed to put a 1/4 cup in here. Now, I don't really measure anymore just because I've been doing this so many times. I'm just going to sprinkle some in there. About a 1/4 cup. And we're good. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stir that in. Right? With the spoon I showed you earlier. We're going to stir it in. Stir it in. And I'm probably going to do this one more time before I put the lid on. I'm just going to let it heat up a little bit. And I'll do one more stir on it just to make sure everything's good and dissolved before I put the top on. We're a little closer now. I'm going to stir it one more time. Make sure that's all good in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the spoon to kind of level it out in there. Right? So we don't have any big humps or little dips in the corn. And it's all pretty much the same. And then I'm going to take that seal that I showed you earlier. Remember, I showed you how to condition this? We're going to put it back into the PC lid, just like that. Alright. Now, we are going to place the lid on, lock it into place. Now, we wait, which probably take a good 20-30 minutes or so, until this is hot enough that this little piece right here, as you can see, this is going to pop up like that. And when that pops up like that, it's going to lock the lid on. And you won't be able to open it until it depressurizes enough for that to fall. So, we're going to wait till this gets hot enough that this pops up and we can proceed. Remember, I told you we were going to let it run until that pops up, and it's up. Now, once that's popped up, what we're going to do is, you see that steam coming out? Alright, we're going to let that run for at least 10 minutes. I prefer 15 minutes, but 10 minutes will suffice, and that's what's called the purge cycle for the pressure cooker. So I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes, and when that timer goes off, I'm going to take the weight and I'm going to put it, ooh, that's hot. We'll put it right on top of there, and then we're going to let the pressure build. So our timer has gone off, and it is time to cap that bad boy. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to wait until this builds pressure, and once it hits 15 psi, I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit. I'm going to turn it from high, probably to medium high, and it will maintain that 15 psi. Now, this may be different with your stove. Your stove might need to stay on high the whole time. That's just going to be something you have to figure out with the equipment that you're using. Mine is a 1800 BTU stove, so it's a bit much to keep it on high. But this is called the forced hydration phase of the drippy corn method. And the purpose of this particular run is to use pressure to hydrate your kernels. Now what I do is I run it for 20 minutes. Once it hits 15 psi, I start a timer for 20 minutes. And once that's done, I kill the fire and I let it depressurize naturally. Do not remove the weight. You leave it on and you let it run for 20 minutes. Now, if you're running feed corn as opposed to popcorn, what you want to do is you want to let this reach 15 psi, and the minute it reaches 15 psi, kill the fire. Do not let it run for 20 minutes. The reason is because feed corn is an open-ended kernel and popcorn is a closed-ended kernel. And the difference is pretty drastic. If you let the feed corn run a 20-minute forced hydration cycle, you're going to end up with a buttload of burst kernels, and we don't want that. What we do want is to find at least 1-2 handful of burst kernels. That way you know it's reached its max hydration. A few burst kernels isn't going to be a problem, guys. If they're half of them are burst, that could potentially be an issue. But, I've absent-mindedly let them run too long and ended up with probably about half burst kernels before because I forgot to set a timer. And you know what? They still colonized fine. As long as the sterilization run, which is what we're going to do once we fill these, right, and run them for 2.5 hours, they will be sufficiently sterilized. And even with the burst kernels, it's just simply not an issue. Alright, as you can see, we have reached our 15 psi and our rocker is a rockin'. So I'm going to turn this down to medium high, and that's going to calm down just a bit, but that 15 psi is going to stay right where it needs to. So now I set a 20-minute timer, and when that 20-minute timer goes off, I'm going to come and kill the fire and let this depressurize naturally, and then we'll move on from there. Our 20-minute cycle has concluded. So now I'm just going to turn it off and let it sit. This is going to depressurize all by itself, and once this drops right here, that's going to unlock the ability to twist the lid open, and then we'll be ready to take it over to the sink and drain it out. Alright, so I got everything moved where I need it now. Alright, the colander's in the sink, got my stirrer, all that. And I got my jars set up over here and my trusty bag of vermiculite. Alright, so I'm going to get the camera set up and we'll get to prepping these jars. So now that we've got everything set up over here, we've got some nice clean dry jars, man, I'm just having issues talking today. Clean dry lids. And then off to the side over here, like I showed you earlier, I have my bag of vermiculite. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take one of these jars and I'm going to fill it with vermiculite. Completely up. Because I'm going to use that to fill the others. So, we want to put enough in the jar just so that it coats the bottom of the jar like that. I don't know how well you can see that or not, but yeah, it's not a lot. Just enough so that you don't see any of the glass on the bottom of the jar. I'm going to do that to all of them. about the vermiculite is actually it has a dual purpose. One purpose of the vermiculite is to help with moisture regulation on your corn kernels. But the second part of it is that it's going to suck up whatever extra moisture you have on your grains, and it's going to keep it locally available for the mycelium to use when it starts to colonize your grains. And what's nice about this is that it has a tendency to use up the additional moisture you have readily available for it, as opposed to sucking the grains dry, right? Because if you spawn dry grains, it's kind of gonna have to soak up some of the moisture from your substrate to really kick things in gear for you. But doing it this way, the grains don't get sucked dry, and when you spawn, it's ready to go. It's in overdrive. So when we do our grains, we don't want to dry them to the extent that most people dry their grains, to where they sit them out for an hour or two on a screen and come and mix it around and hit it with a towel to dry it and all that stuff. No, we want our grains a little bit wet. We're gonna drain them in the colanders for about 30 minutes or so and stir them every once in a while so that the steam evaps off, and they'll be somewhat dry, but we don't want them dry, because like I said, we want the vermiculite to soak up some of that moisture. We want it to have extra moisture readily available in the little microbiomes that you create with these jars for the grains to colonize with. So it has depressurized. As you can see, it's gone down to 0. Our little pop lock here has depressed, and it's time to take the weight off, and we're going to turn the lid and open it. Now, I normally let it sit like this, open, for a few seconds before I try to do anything with it. Let some of that steam blow off. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to dump it into these colanders. Now it's time to drain it out. Now, a lot of people like to hold on to this grain water, and they'll make agar or LT or something like that with it. I personally don't do that, but it seems to be a pretty good idea, right? Familiarize your culture with what you're going to be colonizing on with. So, as you can see, the steam's evaporating. I'm assuming you can see the steam. We're going to go ahead and let this sit for about 20 minutes. About every 5 minutes, I'm going to come over with this, and I'm just going to stir it around. Stir it around like that. It's going to help move it all around and get those grains that are on the bottom up to the top so that they can evap off some of their moisture as well. We are at the jarring phase. So, take my jar. And I should probably be using this instead of my hand. Not that it matters sanitary wise, just probably easier to handle it. Okay, so I personally do not like my jars filled. Now, a lot of people really try to jam pack it in there. But what I prefer, if you can see, it's about an inch under the curve here. You see how that bell curve right there? I like it about an inch underneath. So to me, that's perfection. I'm gonna jar these up. With 2 bags of corn, 2 2-pound bags of corn, which gives us a total of 4 pounds of corn, dry, should equate to roughly 8 pounds of grain once it's hydrated. Now I'm not going to jar up all 8 in front of you. I'm just going to do a few here to get a decent idea of what these are supposed to look like. Okay. So they might not all be perfectly even, but close enough. And as you can tell, I've modded my lids with injection ports and filter stickers. Now, what's really nice about having the filter stickers is that you can close your jars. You don't have to have them cracked loose and with foil over the top. Since they breathe well, you don't have to worry about it, breaking the jar, blowing the top off, any of that stuff. Also, if you get the good ones, the Micropose brand that are PTFE synthetic material with that 3M adhesive, they're hydrophobic, so it doesn't matter if they get wet. Much unlike the micropore tape that some people use on their broke boy lids, that stuff stays wet, it can be a problem. They can grow mold, all kinds of stuff. But with these bad boys here, you don't gotta worry about it. So I'm gonna finish jarring these up, and then we'll move on to the next section. Okay, one little thing I'd like to mention before we move on to prepping the PC for your sterilization run is what properly hydrated corn looks like. This is nice and full. Nice and full. Max hydration. I can actually squeeze it with my fingers. Now normally I'd do a bite test, where if I could bite it in half, it's good to go. But I can literally break it with my fingers. You see that? That is nice and moist. I mean, that is perfection. Some people don't, but I always scrub out my PC after hydrating the grains. And then I put my trivet in here, and I fill it with water right up to the point where it's right at the same level as the trivet. Once it starts to come up like that, you see how it's starting to come up over here? That's telling me that it's getting real close. Once this starts to look like it's going to be underwater, which is getting real close to, that's when I turn off the water. Alright, that's a good sign right there. Okay, now we've got all of our jars jarred up and ready to go. I'm going to move this to the stove and heat it up. Here we go. We've got it all set up and ready. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. Hopefully eventually it lights. There we go. Alright, we're gonna have that on high. Alright, we're gonna let that And let that heat up real good. While we're doing this, I want to make sure that my trivet is centered. And then I'm just going to start loading jars. I like to start with the one in the center. And then I will place them all around. And of course, if we're doing 8 in a 23 quart Presto, that means the 8th one is going to be on its side on top. So we'll get these loaded in here. That's the last one that'll fit in there without one being on its side. This last one here, this poor guy, he's gonna go over here on his side, just like that. And we're gonna take the lid and close it tight. Now we are going to make sure our PC centered. Looks pretty good. And we are going to go through the entire process we did when we were cooking the grains. It's on high. Lid's on. We're going to wait until our popper comes up. Once the popper comes up, we're going to let it purge for at least 10 to 15 minutes. And once it's purged, we're going to put the top on and let it build up to 15 psi. Once it hits 15 psi, we're going to cap it with the weight, and I'm going to turn the heat down to medium high. And then we're going to run it at 15 psi for 2.5 hours, which is 150 minutes. So we got our rocker rocking, and our pressure is up. So once again, like before, I turn it down to medium high. And now I'm going to set a timer for 2.5 hours, 150 minutes. We've completed the 2.5 hour sterilization cycle. As you can see, it has completely depressurized, the rocker's not moving, our pop-up has deflated. So, what I will do is, ooh, that's hot. It's very hot. I'm gonna break it open and let that steam out a little bit. We're gonna pull these jars from the PC one at a time. There's hot gloves. I just use wet rags, right? So I pull them, I just make sure they're nice and snug, and then I do a hot shake. Right? Pull all the jars, snug them up, hot shake. Hot shake. Ooh. Ooh. Boy, those are hot. Uh-huh. Alright, so I'm not going to make you watch me do them all, but you get the idea. I'll do the rest off camera, but protect your hands. Those jars are hotter than hell, and make sure you do a good hot shake, and you're done. That's it. That is the entire keg. Drippy corn from the very beginning to the very end. Let them cool down overnight and they're ready to inoculate. All right. Well, that concludes this episode. Hope you guys stay safe out there and happy cultivating. Beard out.
Well, this has been by far the longest video I've ever made, but I hope you enjoy it. Leave a comment, like it, subscribe. Help the algorithm get this out to other people that might need it. Y'all stay safe out there and happy cultivating.